case not applies a moral obligation, the resolution posits a hypothetical question about what system is preferable to treat juveniles, so the action seeks to prove that juveniles charged with violent felonies have to treat the same as adults in the criminal justice system. Moreover, general statements are upheld to prove true and balance. For example, statement Alex science more than math proving by chemistry than love geometry. Humans have both subjective and objective interests which influence the action they take. Round 1 writes. Consider the notion of subjective interest. To take a subjective interest, it's something to say that in an ordinary circumstance it excites a positive attitude, and means subjective interest supervene upon primary qualities of the receiver so that this subjective context will incite this sensation. Objective notion explains subjective interest, but subjective interests have insufficient normative force to capture desirableness. My subjective interests frequently reflect ignorance. The fact that I am now so constituted that I desire something which had I better knowledge of it, I would not have desired to sought. Does the notion of the objectified subjective interest for an individual A as follows. Give to individual A full factual information about his physical and psychological constitution. A will have become A plus with complete knowledge of himself and whose rationality is in no way defective. We now ask A plus what he would want his non-idealized self A to want. Subjective interest and objective interest interact by wants interest mechanism. The results of acting on subjective interest influence our future actions so that the subjective and objective interest begin to converge. Realm 2 writes. The correlation between acting on motives that congruent with one's interest in achieving a degree of satisfaction plays an explanatory role in the evolution of one's desire. Consider what I call the wants interest mechanism, which permits individuals to achieve self-conscious and self-unconscious learning about their desires and interests through experience. Trial and error leads to selective retention of wants that are satisfiable, leads to satisfactory results for the agent. Normativity is therefore derived from the feedback between subjective interest and results of acting on these desires. Since moral desires supervene upon non-moral properties and wants interest mechanisms is the basis of morality because it provides agents with objective means to follow obligations. And the judge can vote for arguments that aren't based on text resolution because judges' jurisdiction is limited to affirming or negating when signing the ballot. In society, social rationality takes into consideration the interests of all its members. The relationship between subjective and objective interests found in individuals therefore also applies to the same. Realm 3 rights. The notion of social rationality is derived by considering what would be rationally approved of all the interests of all individuals counted equally under circumstances of all full information. The interest in question will be the objective interest. This idealization is equivalent to what is the rational from a social point of view. It is recognized as a criterion of moral rightness. Relative moral rightness is a matter of relative degree of approximation of this criterion. Thus, moral rightness is derived from social rationality. Objective morality is based on what all members of society would have reason to follow. In societies, feedback comes from social resistance to oppressive institutions. Realm 4 rights. Just as an individual who discounts his interests will be liable to certain sort of dissatisfaction, so will a social arrangement, for example, social hierarchy that departs from social rationality by significantly discounting the interests of a particular group and the dissatisfaction of unrest. Social circumstances favor the realization of this potential for unrest, for example, by providing members of the group with experiences that make them more likely to develop interest congruent wants, by weakening the repressive apparatus, by giving them access to new resources, by dispelling the illusion that change itself impossible. One can expect potential for unrest to manifest itself. Thus, morality in society is based around the feedback mechanism between state policy and people whose interests those policies divert. However, when their asymmetrical power relationship, feedback is interrupted, which undermines the wants and mechanism within society. Realm 5 explains. We should expect to see greater approximation in the areas of normative regulation where the mechanisms possibly work best, for example, in areas where almost everyone has substantial potential to infringe upon the interests of others, and where an individual can significantly influence the likelihood of norm-based following on the part of others about himself following norms. The clearest examples have to do with prohibitions against aggression. By contrast, moral questions that concern matters where there exists very large asymmetries in power and the capacity to infringe upon interests are less likely to achieve stable or such earlier stable approximations to social rationality. Clear examples have to do with such matters as social hierarchy. That's why stands preserving social rationality defined as a ruling institution that is good to feedback between states and individuals. Preserve standards for 3 reasons. 1. Other objective theories make moral prescriptions that collapse into tautologies. You're right. When we make normative judgments such as X is good, we can always question is X good? So the question is X good can never be close to the same that is an unmarried male a bachelor can because it's semantic meaning of X which can never be the same as good. Therefore, good can only be defined by the use of other normative notions. If the judgment X is good becomes good is good, which is tautology. Tautological ethics fail because they can never stand reflective scrutiny as they can never independently explain why an action is good. Preserving the feedback between states and individuals is also tautology inherent to alternative moral theories. First, realm has motivational force. When someone's objective interest don't match their objective interest, the negative outcomes from acting with their subjective interest motivates them to shape their desires more closely resemble their objective interest. Thus, it externally motivates action without requiring agents to understand why they have moral obligations. Second, he provides an explanatory account for the development of a person's good, which avoids a tautology by describing the evaluative process for understanding society's values. Second, my standard is based on presumable obligations since the wants interest mechanism directly responds to the outcomes of actions desires of agents. Other ethical theories, however, cannot demonstrate the tangible effects of breaking moral obligations, which undermines the normative force of agents, don't see the distinction between following and ignoring obligations. And presuming adverbs and offense necessary to countering empirically verified neg wins structural time advantage, you prefer fair interpretation as debated in adversarial activity, and any skew of fair burdens prevents a truthful evaluation of the resolution. I contend that the juvenile justice system harms social rationality by destroying the feedback between the state and juveniles who are charged with committing violent felonies. First, the state holds the asymmetrical power of the juvenile justice system as designed to coerce minors. However, this force has become entrenched, preventing juveniles from resisting state's exercise power. Federally explains that the states manipulate the concepts of childhood and adulthood to maximize social control of young people. Whether the juvenile court really had a social function is debatable. From its inception, the focus of the juvenile court has been on children of the poor. This focus was supported by a belief that these children could be subject to different levels of state coercion simply because of their poverty. Consequently, these children and families were subject to state coercion. Abolition of the juvenile court was a structural impediment, enabling us to see more clearly the state's use of coercive power while permitting us to question challenge states' exercise of power. The problem is that the use of power is often amassed by bureaucratization and routinization. The exercise of that power becomes so routine that it is invisible to those in the institution. We unmask the social control function of the juvenile court, including minus the criminal court. Thus enables us to re-examine the function of the criminal court and critically appraise the state's use of coercion and violence in the criminal justice system. Thus, the JJS destroys feedback to routinize oppression of minors, and the distinction between adults and juveniles based on state manipulation was arbitrary and has no morally relevant basis. Second, there is no way to determine if a ruling is improper because judges are required to articulate the reason for the decision. Ainsworth. In a jury trial, juries must be explicitly instructed that the laws applied in the case by a trial jury through written jury instructions. Any other law can be later reviewed by an appellate court. However, when a judge sits without a jury, she need not expressly articulate her understanding of the law. Therefore, the appellate court has no way of determining whether the juvenile court judge misunderstood or misapplied the law to the juvenile's detriment. Thus, the JJS limits feedback by failing to articulate legal reasoning. Finally, the informality of the juvenile justice permits juvenile officials to punish juvenile charged with violent felonies without filing a formal court petition. Therefore, juveniles are arbitrarily punished without going through court proceedings. Simpson concludes. Juvenile court officials have discretion to settle juvenile cases informally at a number of points in juvenile process, thus do not report all offenders in about half the cases in which they do take official action or close out a complaint being filed in the juvenile court. When a complaint is filed in the juvenile court, and intake unit screens to decide whether to file a formal petition in court. If no petition is filed because of judgment that the official action not have been in the youth's best interest, the case may be handled unofficially through informal probation. There are serious problems in the informal handling of cases. Of particular concern are criteria for intake disposition, criteria for deciding whether formal adjudication is in the best interest of the child are not specified in most statutes, and most juvenile courts do not provide written guidelines. Social factors such as the offender's family situation and the attitude of the juvenile and parents towards the authority of the offense may also be considered. Thus, the JJS systematically sanctions juveniles from resisting state coercion. Finally, the sufficient act burdens proof resolution principle for 3 reasons. 1, principles of morality are clearly to default in favor of punishment over rehabilitation. Punishment established in morality pertinent to by judging action, putting punishment general benefit morality established in ordinarily binding force. 2, we should not assume that there are moral distinctions between persons unless there's a corrective reason to do so. The natural recourse in the event that the state cannot pause an obligation to do all people the same, and they cannot judge an individual for being more morally blameworthy than another. And finally, if an action is morally permissible, then that means that the ethical failure fails. If an action doesn't tell us how to act, we have to act in a way that would be a natural recourse, which would be treat them all the same. Alright. Do you want the rest of the case?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Alright.
Sorry. Why is the judge confined to the text of the resolution? What is the internal warrant within the AC?
The argument is that at the end of the day, the judge has to sign the ballot AF or neg, and the text of the resolution is how we determine which ground is AF ground or neg ground.
I'm coming into this round. There are judges that dislike me. There are individuals that dislike me. How is the round inherently fair?
I like you, Jalan. I think that Rebar probably likes you.
Oh, you
I don't think
definitely
this
don't
is a
like
fair
me.
round.
Trust me. You definitely do not like me.
No, I like you a lot, Jalan. I've seen a lot of your rounds. You're an
I'm not
incredibly
worried
impressive
about you.
debater.
I'm worried about the judge, right? How do I not know the judge?
I mean, when I said that Rebar probably liked you, Rebar was nodding his head yes, so I assume that Rebar probably will make a pretty fair evaluation of the round.
How, do things that happen outside of the round implicate or have implications to what happens in round?
Potentially. I'm not sure. You'll have to make that argument.
Wait, what do you mean potentially? Sounds like a yes to me.
It's not a yes.
What is
You have to be making those kinds of theory implications. I'm not going to make them for you.
What does potentially mean, right? Doesn't it lean or err yes?
I mean,
it's
maybe.
definitely not enough.
I don't know. I don't think it leans or errs yes. I'm saying that it is not, physically impossible that perhaps some judges are biased against you.
Why do you dehumanize the discussion?
How do I dehumanize the discussion?
Because you say we talk about the resolution in the hypothetical. You're not talking about the bodies that are going through these systems you advocate.
I'm talking about juveniles who are being harmed. My argument,
what type of juveniles?
The hypothetical question argument
juveniles?
was merely just so I could intrinsically perm any NC that people try to run against me. That's not an argument saying that my arguments are not specific to juveniles.
Where do you say that in the text of the AC?
Where do I say what?
That's
like an intrinsic perm spike?
No, as in you are taking into account the races and geographies and sexualities of the juveniles that go through your system.
Oh, of course. So, in Ainsworth talks about the origins of the juvenile justice system and how it was actually based.
Answer my question.
No, it will. Don't worry.
At the top. No, I'm talking about the argument specifically at the top that says the resolution it will be framed from a hypothetical point of view.
Wait, are you asking me where in case I talk about oppression of actual people? That was my reading
I'm
of
talking about
question.
the specific types of people, right? Like you're not humanizing the discussion.
Okay, so is your question where do I talk about specific groups of people in the AC?
No, it's all right. We can move on. Let's go specifically to the arguments in the case, specifically the Ainsworth analysis, which talks about judges not having to give or display their just jurisdictions. If I read the evidence correctly, it says they don't have to give their credentials for knowledge of the law. Where does it say they don't have to justify their decision?
Wait a minute. No, that's not what the Ainsworth evidence says. What Ainsworth said is that the judges in jury trial, the jurors are given explicitly written instructions by the judge.
Is it okay to endorse oppression?
Is it okay to endorse oppression? I mean, my framework says that it is not constrained to oppression good or oppression bad.
Is it okay for you to endorse oppression?
I mean, you'll have to read a framework one way or
Why
another.
can't you just answer the question?
Because, I'm trying to win the round. I'm not going to try to give you links into a special
I don't
argument
answer your questions in CX. Don't have to bad reaction.
Okay.
Starting prep.
take pages when you're done reading?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right. 1 off, 2 off. Affirmative case. All right. Paul, ready?
Yep.
Judge ready? My standard is constructive moral engagement with the other. Self-acceptance of the duty to empathize with others is the only way to motivate ethical conduct. Otherwise, we won't care about how our actions affect others. Bandor. People without moral standards that serve as guides regarding moral conduct, process people monitor their conduct and conditions under which it occurs, judge in relation to their moral standards and perceived circumstances to regulate their actions by the consequences they apply to themselves. People can choose to behave otherwise by exerting self-influence, self-sanctions, keep conduct in line with personal standards. This passage for self-influence gives meaning to moral agency, self-sanctions, mark the presence moral off. First off case. Historically, minors can canary while working. The bird's respiratory system was sensitive to the toxins and unsafe minds. If the canary died, the miners knew to get out before it was too late. Without the canary, the miners would die silently and unexpectedly. I am a miner's canary. First, at Yale, someone left a threatening note challenging my right to compete because the, quote, affirmative action sucks. Second, LD debaters stereotype because they keep thinking that black people are all the same and think alike. At this year's TLC, coaches and debaters now assume based on skin color that I must debate the game the same way as Elijah Smith did. From last year, third, my courage to discuss racism in all its forms being characterized by the community as quote-unquote comfort zone, and I need to get out of it. This is insensitive to the fact that nothing is more scary than being racially targeted. Fourth, the black judge on top 2-1 decision against me at Newark Knockers told my coaches that his decision was driven by the fear of being perceived as racially preferring me instead of the arguments made in round. This proves that national circuit is so hostile that some black judges are afraid to vote on based who they feel did the better debating. Response, I argue that constructive moral engagement requires survival. I am a minor's canary as I represent these black and brown bodies which the debate community consistently spits. So my experience functions as the warning signal and the warning sign within that analogy. So, in response, these are the moral engagements that require the ballot, or the justifications. First, I've been systematically attacked and bullied to scare me away from being here. These acts make TLC a dangerous place. Criterion requires that you vote for me, because choosing to look away from this is saying that minority people aren't worth defending. Second, TLC committee refused to defend me because violent threats and harassment online for political reasons. When bystanders do nothing, they treat the victim as a subhuman sacrifice with no worth. As a judge of values debate, it makes no sense to assert that we are debating about ethics, but then sacrifice that sensitive at home. Third, debaters on the circuit use each loss as justification to defend their behavior against me and subsequently other harass people in the future. That's why this runs by is high stakes, and why now is the only time if you feel bullying is wrong, incentivize it by giving me a loss of more. Fourth year vote for Bodine J is required. First step to end the cycle. Barbara Colorado furthers. Cycle of violence can be interrupted in circles of caring can grow bigger and stronger when even one person has the more strength to stand up and speak out. The whole community is willing to say no to tyranny with some bullies. The cycle of violence can be broken. Judges don't use their violence speaking out because as soon as the activity will also betray their moral compass. Fifth, even if the argument links to the criterion through the link coming off the AC, that's not sufficient to win because my off-case functions at a discursive level. While case debate operates in terms of topic, thus if the affirmative loses the discursive level, you negate things like you can't vote that if you don't endorse the in-round performance along with the topic. All right, let's go specifically to the second part. The affirmative values conception of morality and justice. This leads to procedurism. Chef and Derrida quote. Justice is an experience impossible. It's not possible rather the fundamental procedure by which to regulate a fair decision because a decision that can be computed is not a just decision. It can only be a calculation. There's no moment in which a decision can be called fully just. Either has been made according to a rule and nothing allows us to call justice a result without a rule, whether perceived, confirmed, conserved, or reinvented, which in turn is not absolutely guaranteed by anything. More of a word guaranteed decision would reduce the calculation. We wouldn't call it just. Criminal justice system has a series double blind between calculation and conformity rules and making new rules that deviate from previous ones. Thus, the affirmative can never achieve justice and morality because they either reinforce the status quo in ways that perpetuate the oppression or change in ways that make the status quo unpredictable. This severs the links coming out of the affirmative case because it's showing you insofar as he's valuing some form of morality or social policy that's claimed to like stop rationality or give individuals the chance to repress back, they never can. And so far as the state is allowed to apply justice ambiguously in some form of a calculation, but this second can't prove the resident true without kicking out of its framework. And the third argument, any affirmative impacts related to procedural awareness or fairness are not functional enough to call just because of ambiguity. Then go specifically to the affirmative case. All right. So first off, the value of morality. This is where the second off case is interacting. Second reason you're not going to look towards the value of morality because insofar as we don't talk about actions or actions that are made to reduce real life in realm morality that can create change. The purpose of talking about morality in realm ultimately becomes self-defeating in a facade to continue perpetuating these abuses. Then, off the objective arguments. One, he's not telling you what's objective. Secondly, his form of objective speaks from a position of privilege, right? Like, I asked him questions about endorsing power, or is it okay to endorse a preference? He's like, no, because I don't want to lose a round, right? So now you don't know where his advocacy is. Don't let him shift advocacies in the next speech, but further, you're going to continue. He can never link into the affirmative case insofar as he doesn't want to sympathize with the other. He doesn't want to have discourse with the other. He wants to win the round. But then go specifically to the arguments about individual actions. insofar as he's dehumanizing it. He's not humanizing the realm because he's talking about things from a hypothetical level. This has two bad implications. The first is when we don't humanize the resolution, this allows us to talk about individuals in units or numbers, as we see some Western philosophers do, which allow us to talk about individual races in a way that may offend or make individuals necessarily feel non-complicit to engage in the corrective discourse. But then second, when we don't humanize the resolutions, this doesn't give us a real perspective of what is moral, because when you are talking about something moral and you're trying to talk about something just from a viewpoint that looks and takes into account of all people, we have to speak from social locations and give different arguments from different social locations. He does none of that with the hypothetical justification. Then I'll go to the spike about like the judge has to vote on the text. One, insofar as I'm coming into this realm with inherent disadvantages that are being applied off of the first off case example, I'm telling you how I don't know I can be adjudicated fairly. The text, or ultimately fairness in the realm, becomes nonsensical insofar as the realm is never fair as soon as I stepped in. The second argument, or the second reason you're not looking towards this, because he's not telling you why you have that jurisdiction to the text. He's not telling you why it's important that we talked about the textual resolution. But then the third reason you're never going to look towards the text is because a focus on the text and a focus on talking about the text shifts discourse away from the important issues that really matter. Right now, the community is screwing minorities over, but if we always talk about the text, we're never going to be able to necessarily focus or engage in these conflicts and in these problems, right? And I'm telling you exclusively, like many of you in this room would not have known these problems had to me if we only talked about the text. These are all independent reasons to vote negative. But then go specifically to the value criteria. So you can cross-apply the off case here to the value. The value is still showing you as you why you can't have this consistency. But then overview to the affirmative case. Insofar as individuals are disenfranchised within the criminal justice system, approximately 1.4 million African Americans are disenfranchised. They are cut off from access to vote, gain employment, and gain other forms of housing. This means they can't check back against the government or the asymmetrical moves he's talking about. This argument is always going to outweigh the affirmative case. Insofar as I'm giving you a direct number, I'm giving you a group that's being quantified in, because they cannot get these rights back. It's irreversible. Then off of the Ainsworth analysis, which talks about judges not having to justify the decisions. One, the evidence just says they don't have to justify them knowing the law, not that they have to change decisions. And secondly, always prefer the discursive arguments coming out of the negative advocacy, because I'm showing you why these operate at a higher level.
So really quick, what was the second argument you said to reject my value besides the off case?
The second argument?
Yeah, or was it just that the off case means I can't achieve morality?
No, there were more than two arguments. The second argument, coming off the reasons of why we look towards morality, is how it's used as a facade by the state to perpetuate rights abuse.
Okay, so if you don't look to my value, then that means that nothing can be. So like according to the Duridian off case, there's no such thing as justice, right? As objective justice.
That's not the argument. The argument is that the way the state tries to implement justice is not just, because of the way it uses.
It's unjust, or it's a flawed conception of justice?
No, it says that it's unjust because it tries to make things through calculation.
Why is calculation unjust?
Right, because that explains that there's intentionality behind the action and the way the state perpetuates these rights abuses. You know, the things you don't think are bad.
Calculation leads to a perpetuation of rights abuses? So like when I make a graph on my TI-89, that leads to like massive rights abuses?
Bad joke. You're not applying it to the state function.
Okay. Let's talk about the off case. Why is the off case pre-fiat? Why is the off case pre-fiat?
What do you mean pre-fiat?
Okay, where do you win that the off case? So is the off case pre-fiat or post-fiat?
My argument is that the off case comes before talking about textual arguments in the resolution. I'm keeping it plain and simple.
Okay, what's my turn ground on the off case?
I'm not going to give you disads.
So I have no turn ground on the off case.
My argument on the off case is
that
you can't link because you don't want to talk about
I can't link. So
you don't want to answer questions.
I don't want to answer questions, so I can't link the off case.
Yeah, like
okay, that's fine.
Specifically.
What is the reason why fairness? Why is fairness not important?
That's explained through the arguments coming out of the AC. Fairness is just used as a way to shift discourse from talking about issues that affect people to the topic. So it allows for those abuses. Secondly, fairness.
Okay, why are those abuses relevant? Where do you justify why those kinds of abuses that you're talking about are implications to the ballot?
That's all through the NC. And I'm sorry if you don't think rights abuses that happen to
members. No, Jelon, don't worry. I think that rights abuses are bad. So is the only argument in
the AC? I mean the NC.
It's in the NC.
Talks about that.
Where? What arguments say that they implicate the ballot because oppression is bad?
All right, let's go ahead and go through them. If you go through the
Bandura.
All right, 6 justification for the rule of ballot.
Well, I see the argument that says that you're a canary. So if you're a canary,
also talks about it. I'm proud to be a canary.
Okay, so this argument says that there's systematic racism, which prevents people...
No, you're not understanding the total complexities of the argument, right? That argument is telling you specifically that when we're looking towards political race and the experience through my black body, right? We need to implement and use the minor sectarian example so we can look through things through the eyes of political race, and the apparatus through which we do that to my black body and the experience I give you. If you can understand my experiences... Okay,
that's fine. So just really quick, so the whole reason fairness is not relevant is because it excludes discourse.
That's not the only reason.
What's the other reason?
I don't think I want to answer that question.
Okay.
Right? Because supposedly it's about winning.
Got me. Okay. Okay. We're going to start with that. What are the reasons? All right. I'll be going on to the Derrida stuff, then on the AC, and then finally on the NC. Actually, sorry, I just had an epiphany. No offs. We're just going to go Derrida stuff, then on the AC, then the NC. Okay. Sorry for that. His Derrida argument does not say that justice, that any conception of formalized justice is going to be leading to injustice. Rather, it only says that we can never have a complete understanding of justice because our calculations are always liable to fail. This means that he's not triggering that my standard leads to injustice. Rather, he is only triggering moral permissibility. Remember, I said it's sufficient at burden is moral permissibility. So if I'm winning permissibility argument, he can see that argument that it is a sufficient affirmative burden. You're going to be signing a valid act. So call for the Derrida at the end of the round. He is completely misrepresenting what the argument is. Then let's go on the AC real quick. Sorry, I said I'm going to go to the NC first, but I think the AC is better. So. First, that permissibility affirms because default to punishment is established in morality pertinent to society by judging actions. Punishment benefits morality by establishing a morally binding force. This is going to be the round where it is over. The very rhetoric when I read this argument said that the sufficient affirmative burden is to prove that the action is morally permissible. Remember, his Derridian ethics generates moral permissibility because it says that there can never be a formalized conception of justice, meaning that we can never call it label an action unjust. So I'm going to get permissibility. He concedes this argument. The round's over. Then. You can extend the realm one evidence that says that humans have subjective interests which supervene upon natural moral properties. That subjective interest can be distinct from the objective interest and it's evaluate what a person has complete knowledge of self and want for views of people with limited knowledge. And any extend realm two that says subjective and objective interests lead people to wants, interest, mechanism, and trial error leads to what people want. Because moral desires supervene upon natural properties and wants, interest, mechanism, and source of morality. So you can extend realm two that says in society social rationality concept of objective interest of all individuals. Realm four explains that dissatisfaction in society causes unrest, resistance causes societies develop interest congruent wants by weakening oppressive institutions. Then you can extend realm five. Realm five explains that feedback requires both parties to have symmetrical powers and infringe upon others' responsibility. That means the criterion is social rationality. Remember, my value is morality, my value is not justice. So if he's going to be winning the argument that value and that justice and morality are the same thing, it is clearly flowing out. That's for the permissibility argument. But I would say there is a distinction because morality functionally serves as a guide to action, but justice just tells us what people want. So there is a distinction, and it's going my way. So you can extend the Jew-1 analysis, which is a reason for my ethical framework above Bandura. This argument goes cold conceded. This is that when you make a judgment X is good, you can always question if X is good without a resolution. Thus, the other ethical theories collapse into tautology, triggers nihilism. They can't explain why an action is good. Then you can explain why realm solves. If a statement has presumably force, then that guide's actually required to increase my criteria meet because incongruence between wants and interest guide people to reform behavior. Two, a moral theory explains the development of values, and you can resolve moral questioning about why X is good. Reality explains why origins of morality through interaction between moral desires and non-moral interests. Listen, this round is over because he is simply not doing enough work on my framework. My framework is always going to be coming first because only my framework results ontology. This is the reason why I prefer my framework over Bandura. Then let's go to his arguments. His first argument, his argument's my framework. His first argument says that I can't have a shift in advocacy framework. I'm not going to be shifting my advocacy. Second argument says that there is no link to my standard because I don't want discourse. I want discourse way more than Jalon did. That's the reason I answered his cross-examination questions. Yet he refused to answer my cross-examination questions. Clearly, Jalon doesn't want discourse. I'm the only one in this round who does. Then. You're going to be extending the federal analysis that says that states use the rules of social welfare to maximize control over young people. Juvenile courts are based on coercing children and families living in poverty. However, this form of combination is hinted by routinization, therefore affirming it's necessary to rectify this coercion and maintain feedback between individuals and things. Then you can extend the second implication that Jalon drops. And since they manipulates the concept of child and adult max, actually, I'm not going to extend that implication. So let's go to his answers. His first argument says that I'm not humanizing people. Remember, I'm directly humanizing people. I'm talking about the origins of this kind of oppression. I'm saying that the state was designed the juvenile justice system so that way they could oppress people who are underprivileged. So that means that I am talking about humanizing. You could also give that argument the second argument because he says I'm not giving a real perspective. I am giving a real perspective. These are poor people who are being oppressed. Then he tries to give an overview that says that a number of people are being disenfranchised, so I can't check back. But remember, this has nothing to do with my standard. My standard is only about feedback between individuals in the state. There's no reason why voting is that only kind of feedback. For example, people who are disenfranchised can go and can rally together and fight back against the state. But what's more, I don't have to defend the resolution of status quo. I can defend hypothetical scenarios. So I do link that argument. Then grip his case. First. You can cross-apply the argument that Jelon Mose answered questions cross-examination clearly doesn't want critical discourse. 2, I didn't blame him on VBD, so there's no reason why I'm responsible for him being canary. 3, he is trivializing the issue when he is trivializing the issue because he is just trying to do this argument to win rounds. Remember, he said in cross-examination that the whole purpose of the debate is to win rounds. Maybe he was saying that facetiously, but either way, he wouldn't answer my question, so that way he would have the easier way to win the round. That means that his argument is only used to win rounds, so he's actually trivializing the issue. Then 4, he is ignoring culpability. That's really problematic because the whole point of Pandora is that you have to be accepting culpability for your own actions, so that means that I'm delinking it from his standard. He's ignoring culpability because I'm being held culpable despite the fact that I'm not racist. 5, I am meeting his standard because I am internally checking back against racism through federally. And then finally, there's absolutely no link to his standard because there's no reason why he is like. Actually, I'm not gonna do that.
Can I see culpability, permissibility before I start prep? At 145.
Here's the case. What do you want?
Permissibility, culpability.
What's culpability? The argument I just made?
Yeah.
I just said that argument. I didn't read it. All right.
Alright, and starting now. Can I see the negative for this bet too?
Yeah, certainly. It's there. Oh, wait, no, that's my argument.
Yeah. On the F, then to my off case, and then to the Derrida, and then I'll like summarize from there. We're starting right at disenfranchisement.
Disenfranchisement.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Opponent ready? Judge ready? The argument on disenfranchisement was really bad. It's literally, quote, these individuals can still get together and go against the government. I named you 1.4 African Americans being disenfranchised. What are they going to do against a country with 350 million people? Really? He's dropping the implications of the argument, which shows you, insofar as African Americans are disenfranchised, they are cut off from access in their ability to vote, gain political housing, employment, and these things that will help them get them out of their social location. He's also not answering the weighing analysis, which is going to be damning for him for 2 reasons. 1, I'm giving you the magnitude analysis, which tells you explicitly that these are the most people that are being affected. I'm only naming you one group. Secondly, the reversibility analysis, which is going to be the most important here, insofar as they can never change their social location. These pieces of individuals can never check back against government abuse. This is the first negative voting issue that's going to link into the affirmative standard because they're never going to be able to like solve for these social objectivity things. He's not doing a good job responding to the internal warrants within these arguments. Remember, any individuals that get into contact with the criminal justice system are going to be charged felons, so this has the biggest impact to the AC. But then go to the AC on his, go to the argument about like the judge and the text. The problem is he's kicking out of turns here. You can extend the second argument, which is that text is used to justify not talking about oppressive things that happen with, this is the spike right above, like, this is spike right above the relative 3 evidence, that the text is used to justify these rights abuses and not allow individuals to talk about things that are relevant within individuals that are in the community. This argument is very damning because his permissibility argument is only relevant so as far as it's talking and linking to the text, but I am winning the argument prior to that. I am winning the argument step 2 that's saying that looking or making arguments towards the text is bad. So insofar as I'm winning this argument, his permissibility argument doesn't matter, so you can't just vote at there. But furthermore, he's still biting into the arms with making a consistent argument talking about the text, so that's the second place you can vote negative. Now let's go to the discourse argument. All right. So the second argument about the VBD flame, where he could have posted anonymously, there's no way to verify whether he didn't, so there's no reason to not hold him accountable for that. The second argument specifically is there are other ways to harm someone's individual identity other than VBD. Like, VBD is not the only way you can harm or encroach on other individuals' rights. Then off the third argument about the purpose, maybe it is my intention to win. That still does not change the fact that what I'm doing is going to help people that are coming from marginalized groups. He's just feeding my argument. This argument is a justification to ignore the text or ignore helping other individuals. Then, off of the argument about culpability, again, the culpability argument here, he's always going to be biting into it from Colorado. Colorado tells you, insofar as you don't stand up and speak against the community, he's allowing for this perpetuation to happen. He's going to say, I spoke to my friends. 1, I'm always going to be meeting him better at this link and better at this argument because I'm speaking to you now. He is not speaking it to you. Any of this issue is really important. Maybe he would have spoke about it in the last speech, so I'm winning the link to Colorado. He doesn't have a link there, so it's functioning as a turn to his arguments. But then off of the federally analysis, the problem is he's not doing the work to tell you the levels in which federally operates. Federally operates in arguments that are specific to the juvenile justice system. Federally doesn't say anything about the debate community. I'm sure you can call that evidence after the round, so it doesn't link to that argument. So then you're extending the argument specifically from the you're extending the argument specifically coming out of the AC, which is the standard of self-moral engagement with the other. We need to be able to empathize and look at other people that come from oppressive circumstances in order to be able to help them stop being oppressed. And insofar as we need to talk about arguments that aren't like relevant to textual fairness, we need to help individuals from oppressive circumstances. That's where you're always looking towards my advocacy first. Now he's going to say, like, there's an argument on the AC about discourse. He's going to say Jelon didn't want to engage in discourse. Here are the distinctions between the refusing to answer questions. My first question in cross-examination, you will remember this, was, will you endorse oppression? He said, no, I want to win, right? He said, I will not answer that. I want to win. This argument means he can never link into the negative standard because he doesn't want to, like, engage with the other because he's not telling you what his advocacy is here, right? He's too busy making jokes on case but not giving you serious line by line to link there. But the biggest problem is he's just dropping the role of the ballot arguments, which always come first. Let's go there now. First, you're going to extend the first argument that because I'm systematically attacked and bullied, there's no way to scare me from being here. These acts have been made in TLC a dangerous place, and the criterion requires that you vote for me because choosing to look away from this is saying that minorities aren't worth defending. Insofar as I'm winning the standard, I'm willing to drop first voting issue and ballot here. Then go specifically to the arguments that debaters on the circuit use these losses and use what happened within these debate rounds to justify the legitimacy of my position. This argument is still going to be giving me solvency as to why you look towards the negative advocacy. So here's how the round breaks down. If you're looking towards the affirmative case, I'm running through disenfranchisement, which is only answered with a small unwarranted response about individuals being able to rebel, and that's not warranted. The second reason you're not looking towards the affirmative case is because he dehumanizes the resolution by talking about things from a hypothetical lens. And that argument always takes out the top contextuality of the ad, because when we're not including people from their social location, which is the caveat to making arguments that are going to speak this truth or not be hypothetical, you can always reject the AC. Remember, my arguments come before the text of the resolution because I am winning the arguments necessarily. A textuality is always used as a means to continue to oppress. He dropped that argument, which means we're not looking to text. Insofar as he's not looking to text, I'm still winning my standard. Remember, I'm extending my voting issue. I mean, for the roll of the ballot, if I win my standard, you vote neg. It's very clear. I'm winning standard, I'm voting neg. He will get up in the next speech, try to win through the AC. I'm winning, he doesn't win the AC because of disenfranchisement. Remember, presuming F is relying on text. I don't mean the argument that text is relevant. You can sign the ballot now.
We'll be going on the AC, then on the NC. All these pretty clear signposting, a lot of crystallization. This round is going to be very, very simple because Jelon does not extend any of his framework justification. Remember, his criterion is premised upon him winning the Van Dora evidence. He does not extend any of the reasons why oppression is uniquely bad or a reason for his standard over my standard. But what's more, I do a lot of weighing the last speech as reason for my own standards. So that's the reason why only my impacts are relevant. Even though Jelon gave a fantastic performance in the last speech, he is simply not above the framework debate. So, on the AC, extend relative one that says that humans have subjective interests which supervene upon natural properties. Our subjective interest can be distinct from objective interest who must evaluate a person who has complete knowledge of himself or who would want a person for limited knowledge. Then extend relative two that says subjective and objective interests interact with the wants interest mechanism. Trial and error leads to people that wants that are beneficial. Then extend relative three that says in society social rationality accounts for the objective interests of all individuals. Then extend relative four that says dissatisfaction in society causes unrest. Finally extend relative five that says that feedback requires both parties to have symmetrical power to infringe upon each other's freedom. Then extend the criterion of preserving social rationality. Then you're going to be extending the weighing I did in the last speech. Extend Jus. Jus says that when you make a judgment X is good, you can always question whether X is good without a resolution. That's other ethical theories to collapse into tautologies of trigger nihilism to think and explain why an action is good. Then extend the first is why relevant solves. And the same as prescriptive force, then it guides actions that require increase. My criterion meets because incongruence between wants and interests guides people to reform behavior. So, this is going to be the easiest place for you to not be voting for Jelon because remember, he makes a whole bunch of arguments about why textuality is bad and why oppression is bad, but he is not extending his Van Dora evidence, he's not extending his own standard. You're going to pretty much have to be intervening for Jelon. So that means standards, preserving social rationality. I'm the only one with impacts back to it. He tries to make a textuality argument with oppression links, but remember, those don't have impacts. He's not linking those directly into my own standards. So That means you can send the federally analysis. Federally says that states use erosion of social welfare to maximize control over young people in juvenile courts are based on coercing children and families living in poverty, or this form of domination is hidden by routinization. Therefore, affirming it's necessary to rectify this coercion and maintain feedback between individuals in the state. That means that I'm winning the federally analysis. I'm winning a very clear impact back to my standard. He tries to extend his argument through ink that says that disenfranchised people can't check back, but I make two arguments that are very good. The first argument is that I am delinking this argument. Remember, the spike at the very top of the AC is that I only have to defend a hypothetical scenario, meaning that I don't have to defend disenfranchisement. That's just a quirk of the adult justice system. So there's actually no offense coming out of the AC. But then you can say the second person that this has no linkage to my standard, because the whole point is we have to have discursive channels between individuals and the state. There's no reason why voting is the only channel. For example, most Supreme Court cases have to do with people that are in prison anyway. So that means that there's still going to be the discursive channels that are necessary to check back the oppressive government. I'm way ahead on the AC debate rebar. You can sign your ballot right here, right now. Then let's go to the NC and accept all the arguments that Jalon mishandled. The first argument is that Jalon won't answer my questions. So he tries to answer this by saying I'm not answering his questions. No, the question I wouldn't answer is I'm not going to say a question isn't a priori wrong, because that would obviously conflict with my case. It's the same way that if he asked me to give him all of my blocks and I decide not to give him all of my blocks and all my front lines to my own cases, then I would, you can't call that not answering questions. However, Jalon actually wouldn't answer questions. I was asking serious questions about the discursive impacts of his arguments. He refused to answer them, meaning that none of his impact arguments are relevant anymore. You can that turns back 100% of the NC. But then you can say the second argument about trivializing the issue. He says, yeah, fine, maybe I am trivializing the issue. All I want to do is ground. So this is really problematic because this undercuts all of his arguments. He's trying to make a social change against oppression, and people are only resisting the social change because they know that Jalon's only doing it through the rounds. So here's how the round's breaking down. The easiest place for you to vote is on the AC. Listen, I'm way ahead on the framework debate, not including any of his arguments, not looking at my standard. If you don't want to vote there, there are two pretty conceded turns on the NC, which will be voting after your choice.